Greg Rinckey is a former attorney for the United States Army Judge Advocate General Corps, known as JAG, now a partner at the law firm of Tully Rinckey. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Obviously quite a shocker, at least for many in the courtroom there. Bring me sort of through your thought process as you hear about this verdict.
Absolutely shocking. I really believed that Sergeant Martinez was going to be convicted. But then again, I wasn't sitting in the courtroom, didn't get to hear all the testimony, didn't get to see the demeanor of the witnesses, and a lot of times that plays into these cases.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've worked in just civilian cases where you come outside and people have a very different opinion than the folks who are inside.
Absolutely.
So certainly that can play a role. But bring me through some of this, some of the readbacks that the jurors or the panel were hearing, these last couple of days, today and yesterday. It seemed pretty cut and dry, at least to those of us on the outside. Prosecutors saying Martinez was the only one who had access to the murder weapon, or that he was given the murder weapon. He was in the area at the time, that he didn't like his superiors. Pretty cut and dry. Where's the reasonable doubt?
Well, it appeared very cut and dry, but the reasonable doubt here, I think, was that they didn't have the smoking gun. The prosecutors didn't have any direct evidence linking Sergeant Martinez to these murders. Sergeant Martinez's statement was also suppressed, and I think that was a very damaging thing that happened to the government's case, was when they couldn't get his statement in, which kind of implicated him in this. It was very damaging, because that was the link that they really needed to show that Sergeant Martinez was the one who committed this. Also, you had CID and the MPs, after this incident took place, they focused in solely on Sergeant Martinez. And the defense did a good job of portraying the first sergeant as also someone who could have committed this incident. And CID and the MPs did not investigate him. So I think you had the defense putting on a good case of, well, there's doubt here. And I think that's what the panel, hinged on. The panel viewed all the evidence and it said, well, there's some doubt here.
And these days we all expect to have forensic evidence, the CSI sort of deal, and of course that's just not the case in many of these cases. But is that something that these folks sitting on the panel wouldn't necessarily need? I mean, these aren't certainly a jury of peers per se.
Right. I mean, the panel still wanted more, obviously, in this case, and they just didn't get it. So, I mean, it doesn't mean that Sergeant Martinez is innocent. It just means that the government didn't prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt, and the panel wasn't willing to convict him of it.
Sure. What do you make of some of the readbacks that we were hearing about? Of course, one of them talking about how immediately after the explosion took place, Martinez seemed unconcerned. He was sort of walking around, almost, the hint is, like he was expecting that there would be no more explosions.
Right. I think that the panel and the defense tried to explain that away was, well, hey, there was just an explosion on base, a claymore mine went off, anyone in the area would be shell-shocked. It's a normal reaction to a claymore. At the time when it went off, they didn't know it was a claymore. It could have been a hand grenade attack, could have been an IED, it could have been a mortar attack. So, the reaction of him being shell-shocked, that could have been a normal reaction of anyone.
We heard from that quote from one of the wives, apparently, of the victims, who screamed out in court, apparently. That quote, is that it? And that's the question that I now ask you. What happens now? Is this it?
Well, unfortunately for the victim's family, yes, that is it. The case is done. Double jeopardy has attached. He walks out of the courtroom a free man. And could the prosecutors bring some additional charges? Yeah, there's been talk that they could bring charges of possession of an illegal flare gun, having alcohol. But is the government really going to bring these very minor charges? I don't think so. I think that this is it. I mean, double jeopardy's attached. He walks out today a free man. Does
he go back to work? Can they discharge him? Where is he at? I mean, will we see him walking around Troy soon?
Tomorrow he goes back to his unit. Whatever unit he's assigned to, he'll go back. He'll complete some paperwork. He's out of confinement tonight. And theoretically, yes, he can come back to his National Guard billet up here in Troy. What is he going to do? I don't know. It's a tough question because he has 15 years and he needs 20 to retire. Is he going to just walk away from that at this point? I don't know, but he's also going to be a pariah within the military. So is he going to request a discharge? Very well could request a discharge, and I'm sure the government would grant him a discharge for the convenience of the government.
And so it's certainly up to him, it sounds like. Explain the process real briefly, because the civilian courts and military courts are very different. The panel only needs 2/3 of the panel to find him guilty, right? And death penalty case, they also need unanimous. Bring me through that.
Well, the military panel, in order to find a soldier guilty of any crime, it's a 2/3 vote. It's not a unanimous verdict like it is in a civilian trial. So that's sometimes a bone of contention that people have with the military system is it's easier to convict people, and absolutely it is. But in this case, the system worked. You know, basically he was not convicted, and a lot of people thought that he was going to be convicted.
Actually getting the death penalty quite rare as well. Certainly not an issue anymore in this case. The case is done. But there is one man facing the death penalty fairly shortly, and that's the first time in decades, right?
Yes. Private Greg is the first soldier who's right now, President Bush just signed a death warrant. He's to be put to death, I think, December 21st in Terre Haute, Indiana. And he'll face death penalty by lethal injection. The most recent death penalty meted out by the Army was 1963 by hanging. So, I mean, it's been a long time for the military to have a death sentence. Yeah,
bring me through the implications, because I'm sure this is going to be talked about in the military. I mean, first of all, you having your experience, what do you think is going through the minds of folks from, you know, the top to the bottom after hearing this result?
I think there's a lot of shock, but you know, the military will stand by the verdict. I mean, these officers, very well respected officers and NCOs that sat on this panel, you know, they're going to respect the verdict. I mean, is everyone going to agree with it? No. But that's the way it is in the civilian world, too. We don't always agree with the verdicts that come down, but you have to respect it. That's the American system.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to hit on just a little earlier, I want to clarify, the panel is made up of not a jury of the peers, right? I mean, these are higher-ranking folks, so that really says something about this, especially when you only need 2/3 of the folks. I mean, it's saying that the defense made a pretty strong case. The prosecution didn't do it.
Absolutely. Defense put on a very strong case. You know, they took a unique position in not putting Sergeant Martinez on the stand, which sometimes can cut against them. But in this case, it worked.
And how key is that to not have him testify? Because there was certainly some debate, as there always is in any of these cases. I mean, there's one attorney who, you know, quotes probably another attorney who quotes another attorney who says, you know, I get paid, you know, $5 to do all the work, and, you know, $50,000 a case to figure out whether the person should testify or not who's accused. I mean, how crucial is that, especially when you said that statement of his was barred from the actual case?
Right. Well, that's part of the reason I think he didn't take the stand, because if he had taken the stand and he had contradicted anything that he had said in that statement, now that statement could have come in. That statement was only suppressed on basically the premise that he was not going to testify. Once he testifies, though, that statement could come in, and that's probably the real reason that the defense team said, you're not going to take the stand, because if you say something that's in contradiction to your statement, now all of a sudden you've opened the door, and that statement can come in, and that statement is not a good statement for you. So a good strategy by the defense.
Now, you and I have talked before about you can't send political messages, certainly in the military,
right,
by a court case, certainly. And yet in this court case, I mean, this military case, we are seeing that in a way, I mean, there are some messages that come out of here, and I'd imagine if I was an officer, I wouldn't like that message very much if I'm someone who thought this was a guilty person, which, of course, he is not guilty. He has been acquitted tonight, Alberto Martinez. But is that something that, you know, with the officers you speak with, would be a concern? How do you think about that going forward?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a concern because this is a case that goes to the good order and discipline of the troops. I mean, this is a case where you had a soldier, someone killed these officers. You know, it wasn't Sergeant Martinez, someone killed these officers. So it's very much a concern to officers and NCOs Army-wide. I'm sure it's a topic of conversation across the Army tonight.
Now, bring me through, of course, you know, someone obviously killed these officers. If they find new evidence, they can certainly bring a case again, right? Just against someone else. They can't do it against.
Oh, absolutely. If there's new evidence that's discovered, they can bring a case against someone else. Sure. That's always an option. Against Sergeant Martinez, it's going to be very hard to do it because double jeopardy is attached. Yeah. And the evidence should have came out at trial, not afterwards.
Sure. Let's talk about fragging briefly. I mean, how common is this? It's something we've heard going back, I believe, to the Vietnam War, but bring me through that.
Well, there was actually one other case of fragging right before this Iraqi war started. Sergeant Akbar threw grenades into a tent, actually wounded one of my Army buddies that I went to the JAG school with. A captain, Captain Morton, was in the tent, and the only reason he lived was he was sleeping with his flak jacket.